Good morning, church. Well, I want to say this morning that I am acutely aware that there's many feelings, aren't there, across us as individuals, across us as a church collectively, and across our nation. There's been such a lot happen, hasn't there, in the past 10, 11 days. There's been a sense of loss. There's been a period of waiting, hasn't there? And in amongst all that, immediately, a king has been realised. I feel like it's a time that I can't ever remember another time like this in my lifetime. We've had so much information fed to us, haven't we? I know in our household, we've had a TV on in the background. It feels like 24/7. I don't know if your households are anything like ours, but we've almost got a fifth member of our family, and it's a BBC News correspondent in the corner talking away to us and just telling us what's going on, explaining all the processes and all these ceremonies that are happening that we don't really understand completely, but we're just aware that there's continually been something going on. And of course, over the last few days, I'm sure in amongst your households, you've been recounting memories that you've got of the Queen, haven't you? You've been saying what you can remember what you were doing, perhaps when it was a coronation, when it was another royal event, where you were. I don't know, some of you may have been to meet or be in the presence of the Queen. I haven't really got anything grand that I can tell you like that, but in the early 90s, who remembers that the Queen came to Dudley? Yeah. Anybody else? Go on, show us your hands if you can remember it. Steph, where are you? She came to Dudley Zoo and Castle. Do you remember that? I know you wouldn't be there working, but she did. She came. I was there. Oh, yes, I was there. A bit of the backstory to this. I played at school in the brass band and the orchestra. I don't tell many people this. It's not something to be proud of, I don't feel. But when we were kids, you got chosen what instrument you were going to play at our school. If you were one of the dainty girls, you got to play the flute. Some got to play the violin, some got the clarinet. I got the trumpet and the cornet. Oh, dear me. It wasn't good. And in the run-up to this event, there was, I remember, a concert that the Dudley group put on. I guess it was kind of like a precursor to the Queen coming. And they'd sat myself and my friend at the edge of the stage, and we both got our cornets ready to play. And for some reason, we got a fit of the giggles. And it ended up with Flossie falling off the end of the stage. Now, I don't know if you know how loud it sounds when somebody's laughing into a trumpet and then it falls off the end of the stage, and then the person sitting on the chair falls after it, but it's really not good. Needless to say, when the Queen came to Dudley Castle, I was stood at the back. Me and Flossie were stood at the back. We weren't sitting down, we were all standing. And the Queen came past in her car. I didn't see her. We were so far back, and she whizzed by so fast. I don't think she even heard a toot of what we played, to be honest, but I was there. Anyway, back to it. Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of the United Kingdom and other Commonwealth realms from the 6th of February 1952. She was Queen during her lifetime of 32 sovereign states. Her reign of 70 years and 214 days is the longest recorded of any British monarch. Her reign is the longest recorded of any female head of state in history. What a legacy. You know, history has afforded to monarchs of the past an era, hasn't it? There's been the Edwardian era. There's been the Georgian era, the Victorian era. And these eras define a period of time in history, don't they? And not just who reigned, but the culture. It defines the technology, the architecture, the mindset of that particular time. But I'm so aware that Elizabeth's reign sort of spans more than a period of time, doesn't it? She lived through so much and reigned in such a time of change and advance. And yet, she was remarked upon as being a constant. In a time of change, so many people I've heard giving interviews have said she was a constant. But before all this, she was a young princess. It was 1940, and Britain was in the early stage of war. She was 14 years old, and she gave a speech on BBC Children's Hour. She was offering a bit of encouragement, I think, in this, for those children who've been separated from their parents during the Blitz. So I've asked Grace if she would come up this morning and just read part of that speech to us now.
We know, every one of us, that in the end all will be well. For God will care for us and give us victory and peace. And when peace comes, remember it shall be for us, the children of today, to make the world of tomorrow a better and happier place.
And again, on her 21st birthday, she made a speech, which included what Grace is going to read to us. And then after this, I've asked Grace if she would just give one reflection about what she remembers of the Queen, or what she wants to say about the Queen. So Grace, take it away.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it will be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong. But I shall not have strength to carry out this resolution alone unless you join in with me. As now I invite you to do, I know that your support will be unfailingly given. God help me to make my good vow, and God bless all of you who are willing to share it. I remember every Christmas watching the Queen's speech and listening to her talking about her faith in Jesus.
What strikes me about those two pieces is that even before she reigned, she had devoted herself to serve. She was dedicated in this resolve. Grace has just said that the Queen declared that all her life would be devoted to service. But she recognised that she couldn't do it alone. She needed the support of her people, and she asked for God's help. Her first Christmas broadcast was in 1952, and she spoke of dedicating herself before her coronation. So that was going to be in the June following. She said this: "Pray that God will give me wisdom and strength to carry out the solemn promises I shall be making, and that I may faithfully serve him and you all the days of my life." Now, there's some here, I'm not even going to look, but some of you may remember the coronation. Some of you will have heard your parents or grandparents talk to you about it. But I've asked Ron if this morning he would come up and share some of his memories of that and give us some of his reflections about the Queen.
Good morning. My memories of the coronation. Well, the main was we had a street party. I lived then in the West Midlands, Willenhall. I don't know if anybody knows Willenhall, in between Walsall and Wolverhampton. And the street where I lived was a cul-de-sac. In those days, it was the old back-to-back switch, you know. And we had a street party which was arranged by all the mums, all the tables down the centre. We had our jelly and blamon and some pop. And I remember I was 13 at the time. Now that might seem very old to some of our young folk now, but being 13 then and being 13 now is two different worlds. And no television. We didn't even have electricity, actually, down our street. No telly. But we did have the papers. And we had the wireless. That's radio to those of you who don't know it. And we had, again, the cinema newsreels, where we would see what was going on, you know, down at the pictures. Again, that's the cinema. And it was a time when, even though how young we were then, the Queen was held in high esteem. And I can remember that even in our school assemblies in the morning, we always prayed for the Queen and King at that time, and it was always a part of our lives. And it's just been, I mean, now that over the years, but it's been 70 years of the Queen since then. And I just want to share with you, a couple of things from speeches that she made, which, as Emma has said, it made it quite obvious that she knew the Lord and depended on him quite a lot. So the one thing that she said in one speech was, "The things which I have here been mispromised, I will perform and keep, so help me God." Which is a real call for help. And then on the evening following her coronation, she made a speech which was broadcast, thanking the public for their support and promising to serve the nation. And in that speech she said, "Therefore I am sure that this my coronation is not the symbol of power and the splendour that are gone, but a declaration of our hopes for the future and for the years I may, by God's grace and mercy, be given to reign and serve you as your Queen." She was a lovely lady.
Thank you, Ron. Moving on from the coronation, another point that I love about the Queen is that she actually changed her own job description. Who knew? In the 90s, her role, as in the 1867 Constitution, is head of state. But in the 90s, she added head of the nation. And that was to cover all the unspecified roles of a modern monarch, promoting voluntary service. The Queen was promoting service. I'm just so aware, this month we're calling it Serving September. Be encouraged through this example of service. The Queen set it so well, didn't she? She served for so long. She served others. So in this, let's be encouraged also to serve the King of Kings. A serving heart is one that's blessed. It's one that finds joy and one that's changed. Serving will give you a sense of purpose. Serving connects you with the other people that you serve and the people that are serving alongside with you. Serving takes the focus off yourself and puts it elsewhere. Serving offers hope to other people and it shows God's heart. And one example I can think of that was a lot of people serving is at Christmas, we encourage the community to come into our church and we serve them through what we call the Winter Wonderland. And we invite all the church to invite other members of their community to bring people in. They walk into this church and there's a choir up here singing Christmas carols to them. A lot of people don't hear carols sung very often anymore. So they come through and they hear the choir singing and then they go upstairs and they walk through, see lots of nice Christmassy type scenes, and then the children are encouraged to do a craft about Christmas. Seeing those families was pure joy. Each person that served that day had a sense of purpose. Everyone had a job to do. And you know what? It took the focus off us and it put it onto the people that we were serving. Last year, we were coming out of coronavirus, and there were so many restrictions, and we still felt like everything was changing. And yet, we put that to one side, and we served. We took the focus off everything else, and we wanted to bring joy to our community. We offered hope to people that came through the door. You know, we had people contact us beforehand and say, we're shielding, we can't come to anything like that. And we said, no, you can. We want to offer the opportunity for you to come in when there's nobody else in this building. You can come. We had people say that we couldn't go to experience something like this because we just can't afford it because of what happened in that year. And we offered hope and said, you're very welcome to come and join us. We don't charge, we don't take an offering during that giving. We just serve the community. We wanted to show God's love to people, and it was just a practical way that we can do that, and we can talk about God to people. And it doesn't have to be an event like that, does it, that we serve? I'm so aware that we all serve in different ways and that we can do day to day. But I want to serve, and I want God to change me through that every day. His word says in Mark 10:45, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, to give his life as a ransom for many." And in Galatians 5:13 and 14, it says, "For you were called to freedom. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love, serve one another. For the whole law is fulfilled in one word: you shall love your neighbour as yourself." And reflecting on Queen Elizabeth, her life was defined by many moments, wasn't it? Childhood, marriage, children, her coronation. But ultimately, it was her service that she gave. Her life wasn't without the lows. We all know about them. However, as sure as Christmas pudding follows turkey, each Christmas we would be sure that 3 o'clock would come and we'd see the Queen give a speech. And she'd offer a reflection, wouldn't she? She'd offer a message of hope to her nation. And she drew upon her faith to offer that hope. And in that Christmas 2020, it was a year like no other, like we've mentioned. So many people's lives had been changed. So many people were without loved ones, and she offered hope, saying the following: "Even on the darkest of nights, there is hope of a new dawn." She spoke about the Good Samaritan in that message. And then she spoke about all the wonderful acts of kindness that she'd seen that were still so relevant then as they were now. She went on to say how the teachings of Christ had served as her inner light. The sense of purpose had been found in coming together to worship, and she reassured the nation that when they may have felt alone and could not be with loved ones, that they were in her thoughts and prayers. And then, to finish, and this is the part that I really wanted to highlight today, she said, "Let the spirit of selflessness, love, and above all hope guide us in the times ahead." I'll say that one again. Let the spirit of selflessness, love, and above all hope guide us in the times ahead. Now, we all know that the Bible speaks about love. I've stood up here before and spoke about it. 1 Corinthians, we all say, don't we? These three remain: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. But selflessness and hope, well, for me, I look to the Old Testament, 1 Kings, and to Elijah. So can I just talk to you just for a couple more minutes about Elijah? Bit of the backstory. So Israel had been ruled by some evil kings, and there was great suffering in the land. And then enters Elijah. So I'm going to read from 1 Kings 17, 1 to 16. Now Elijah said to Ahab, "As the Lord, the God of Israel lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years, except at my word." Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah: "Leave here, turn eastward, and hide in the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan. You will drink from the brook, and I have directed ravens to supply you with food there." So he did what the Lord said. He went to the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan and stayed there. The ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. Sometime later, the brook dried up because there had been no rain in the land. Then the word of the Lord came to him, "Go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon and stay there. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food." So he went to Zarephath. When he came to the town gate, a widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and asked, "Would you bring me a little water in a jar so that I may have a drink?" As she was going to get it, he called, "And bring me, please, a piece of bread." "As surely as the Lord your God lives," she replied, "I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I'm gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die." Elijah said to her, "Don't be afraid. Go home and do as I've said. Make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have and bring it to me, and then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord said, the God of Israel says, the jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry, until the day the Lord sends rain to the land." So she went away, as did Elijah had told her. There was food every day for Elijah and for the woman and her family. For the jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word of the Lord spoken by Elijah. I love Elijah in the Bible. So there's no rain, the drought is in the land, and God tells him to go to Kerith, and the ravens will bring him food. There's Elijah hiding, and he's got the raven caterers coming to him. But you know what? He took God at his word, and he's not without food. And then God says, "Go to Zarephath, to a widow." And there he goes, but he finds her collecting sticks. That's not food. The woman doesn't even have enough food for herself and her son. In that situation, there didn't really look, in the natural, to be that much hope, did there? He could have looked at that situation and thought, how am I going to survive? I've just left my raven waiters. I've come here, and there's nothing for me now. It would have seemed to anybody around by that him approaching a woman collecting sticks wasn't his best move. It probably wasn't his best option if he wanted to be fed that evening. But Elijah took God at his word. And this morning I want to remind you there's no lack in God. Ephesians 3:20 says, "He is a God who is able to do immeasurably more than we can ask or imagine, according, not to us, but according to his power that's at work in us." So Elijah took God at his word. And when he saw that woman at Zarephath who had nothing, he instructed her, he said to her what he knew from God. And through that, none of them went hungry, because there's no hopelessness in God. That woman might have been gathering what she thought was her last meal, but she trusted Elijah. She trusted that what God had told Elijah, he would promise. That the jar of oil would not run dry, that the flour would not run empty. She served. She went home and she made that bread. And she didn't feed herself straight away. She went back and served first. And then she ate. And you know what? There was an overpouring. There wasn't just enough for her. The Bible says there was enough for her family too. Because God is not a God of lack. Looking back at when he went to that Kerith ravine, he might have wondered what on earth he was doing. After all, if we just take a step back, that might have looked like the Old Testament's version of Uber Eats or Deliveroo. These ravens keep coming. He did not have a mobile phone or an app, and yet those ravens kept bringing food to him. But he acknowledged that things were changing. There was a time of change and that he needed to move on. He moved on to Zarephath. And both Elijah and that woman trusted. They weren't disappointed. And I want to say this morning that you might feel like you're in the middle of something, in the middle of grief. You might feel like you're in the middle of a situation that you're not seeing the end of it and you're too far from the beginning. But can I remind you that your hope is well placed in God? Your hope is well placed in Jehovah Jireh, the God who provides. He's Jehovah Shalom. He's your Prince of Peace. He's the King of Kings. He's the Lord of Lords, and he gives hope. So today, rest assured, no matter whether things around you seem like they're chaos, or they might seem like calm, you might feel a little bit overwhelmed by everything what's going on around you, and equally, you might feel a little bit underwhelmed by everything. But your hope is well placed in him. He holds you right in the middle of whatever it is you're going through. Hope is here. Hope is found in him. Romans 15, verse 13 says this: "May the God of hope fill you with joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit." I love that verse. I don't know about you, but I want to overflow with hope. I want to overflow with love. So, we're here this morning to give thanks for the life of our Queen, for the service that she's given, and the legacy that she leaves. So can I encourage you this morning to serve? In serving September, serve with selfless hearts, with hope and love.